Hello everyone. So yesterday I felt like it would be a great idea to just come on and share some of the concepts that to me are really, really integral in order to truly get the most out of an astrological practice. And the reason for that is because if these things are missing, to me, it feels like astrology is only just going to be able to serve you up to a point, and you'll see why. And I'm so excited to share these things. They're very important to me. I try to put them into everything I ever post because I have such an important knowing inside that I do not want to engage in a type of astrology that doesn't take these truths into consideration or not founded on these truths. So I will repeat myself a lot of times for that reason. And that's because astrology has sort of, in certain ways, and I believe it was very intentional, and I'll talk about that a whole nother time, but, has kind of devolved into like this thing that we just see as like entertainment or like this light sort of fun thing or whatever. And yes, there's a lot of fun to it, but I was given a very clear directive that I am here, and there's others as well who are here to restore integrity to this practice, and I'm going with that. So I will be repurposing this into a podcast episode and just into something that I feel like, if you come to my world or my page in any way, like I would love for you to start here. So I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to try to keep this very to the point and not too lengthy. I'm also working with not much battery, so that will help me be very concise. So practicing safe astrology, just in a nutshell, to me is about practicing astrology in a way that is honoring your free will, that is allowing for you to extract real depth and real meaning from it, and is practiced in a way that it's really just about your free will. If I was to put it just all into one nutshell, it's that. Because, labeling yourself or others, limiting yourself in any way, that just goes back to free will. So really it's just about free will, which is the most important thing. When I studied Kabbalah, I learned this beautiful concept that the angels are kind of like jealous of us humans because we have free will. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And it was written in a much more beautiful way than that. But our free will is just what makes everything what it is, and that is the realm we're in. That's why we came here. And astrology can be very, very dangerous if it interferes with that. And so I really tried to be so careful not to ever go down the path of in any way hindering that, right? For myself. I don't know what other people are doing. Okay, so the first tenet or the first concept is that one that I shared probably the most, okay? And this is really, really integral, okay? So you may have heard, the saying or the teaching, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. And that is a beautiful, beautiful teaching, and it's the law of correspondence. So the little shift, the little nuance here is, and it's a big shift really, is that astrology is not a system of cause and effect. I know that there's people out there who may believe that, and that's fine. But in my way of practicing it, this is what I believe. I do not believe that the planets have an effect on us in terms of saying like, because I was born with Venus in Aries, or because Venus is in Aries right now, that's why things are happening. And it's really about conscious language to me, where the difference between the two is the difference between giving power to something outside of myself versus seeing myself as a part of the whole and part of the cosmos. So cosmos, the meaning is divine order. And just feel the difference in your body. Feel the difference in how it feels to say, like, I was born at a moment in time, right, when the sun was in Gemini, because my soul, right, and my purpose and my karma and all the things won't get together. Oh, okay, it stopped. Okay, so anyway, sorry. So it feels so different, right? And to be able to say, okay, maybe, you know, the sun's in Pisces right now, but that's not causing me to do something, or that's not causing certain events in my life to happen. Rather, that's the energy, that's the frequency that we are internally also expressing. So because it's a reflection, right? The as above, so below. It's kind of like being able to see that where the planets are now, or where they were at your time of birth, or whatever you're looking at, that's a reflection of your inner cosmos, right? So you don't have little planets inside of you, right? But you have those frequencies, you have those forces, and basically they represent, you know, different parts of ourselves. And so it's a really important distinction, I feel. And that's tenet number one. So whenever I am sharing content or reading things about transits or what's happening in the stars, I really root myself in that foundation, that core concept that it's a reflection. And so it gives the power back to me, right? Where I'm not a victim of the cosmos in any way. And I'm also not influenced by it, right? Because I'm simply able to see it as a reflection of certain cycles and phases that I'm in personally, and also that we're in collectively. So that's like the biggie. That's like the most important thing. And that ties back to our free will, of course, because again, we're not at the mercy of these forces, right? Even like Mercury retrograde, like, yes, Mercury is retrograding, but the system of astrology is about looking up to see within, right? So when Mercury is retrograde, that is a reflection of Mercury retrograde inside of us, right? And it takes a practice, it takes time to understand that connection between the outer planet being a representation or an archetype of a force within each of us. And it's actually very healing. And it's really, really a whole way of seeing things when you start to really tap in. So that's concept number one. If you have any questions about that, let me know. And honestly, I could do videos for hours on each of these, but I'm just kind of doing an overview, and I want to see if anybody has questions or if any of these things are bringing up certain other conversations. This is just an overview. So the second thing, this is a really interesting one. It's that astrology isn't like this like thing outside of us. It's not like this like separate system or something that like exists. And like to me, astrology is just life, right? So when we have transits or we have things going on, it's not like this thing happening outside of us, right? It's not like we have to like keep track of it or something. It just is, right? It's a language to describe the unfolding of time and a language to describe energy. So I learned another beautiful teaching in Kabbalah that there's one way of seeing things, that, there's the world and, life and all the things, and God exists within the world. And then there's another way of seeing things where there's God and the world exists in that. And that's kind of, again, the subtle shift where we're seeing that astrology is not like this thing that I have to learn or, keep track of. It's hard to put it into words, but it's like, if something is happening in the astrology, it's happening in your life because they're one and the same thing. So when you're going through a transit, or if you're having a return, or, a full moon or whatever it may be, it's not anything separate from you. It's just merely again, reflection, but also a lens and a context for that thing that's happening. So try that out. See how it feels different from approaching it as this thing outside of yourself, right? Or this system that is separate. It's really just everything. So I really tell people, if something's happening in your life, let's take Mercury retrograde. I feel like it's the most relatable thing. All the issues are coming up and weird things and people coming from the past, it's not happening because it's Mercury retrograde, right? They're one and the same. And so you don't have to really worry so much about doing anything to participate or to get what you need out of astrology. It really just provides a context for things, and whatever is happening, if you are moving and it's Mercury retrograde and that's just what's naturally unfolding in your life, that's what's happening on your Mercury retrograde, right? So sometimes people see it as I shouldn't do something or whatever. And that's that fine line. That's where the free will, comes in for me. And I'm but if that's what's happening in your life, then that's part of your retrograde experience. And you let it happen, because it's not, again, about controlling something or seeing it as separate. It's about giving it context. So you can say, okay, that's interesting that that's coming up, or that's what's happening during this retrograde cycle for me. And again, it should provide a context. So let me know how that sits for you, and if you have questions about that one. The third concept is your experience is the best teacher, right? So me or any other astrologer out there, to me, the worst thing that we can do is outsource our experience or meaning. And I know it's fun to read about it and follow certain people and want to know what does the full moon in Virgo mean? What is that? But please try to get into a habit of first tuning into what's happening in your life. First tune into what's just happening, what's actually coming up for you, and then put that into the context of the astrology instead of the opposite. And that direct experience is the most important thing, because first of all, no astrologer is going to have the exact same experience that you're going to have. And that kind of, again, to go back to what I was saying at the beginning, that really just keeps astrology at this very kind of surface level, where you're just following a certain formula or someone else's opinion or experience of it and missing out on what's really, really, really available, which is so much more meaning for you on a very individual level. And that, to me, is the most important thing, because there's no way that any astrology blog or video or whatever can ever fully tune in and tell you what your experience of it is going to be. And that's because it's so nuanced, it's so multidimensional. It's not just about the chart, let alone your choices, your free will, you know, everything about you, your karmic, you know, everything. So your direct experience is the best teacher and source of information. So when you're Googling, right, like what is Mercury retrograde? What is this going to be about for me? Like Google it inside yourself. Find the answer inside yourself by observing your life, observing what's coming up for you, inner and outer, starting to pay attention to the cycles, starting to tune into your inner cosmos, which is, you know, how you are in certain energies, knowing yourself in it. And that should be where you get your information. And then you can go and tune into others. But this whole industry and this whole thing that we've kind of gotten into where it's like, oh, I'm going to go look it up and I'm going to take that. And that's what it's supposed to be, is just so like the most like base, like an undeveloped way that we can really go about this. I hate to say it. We have to move past that. We have to get out of this kind of like cookbook astrology, because it's just, again, it's only going to take us to like a very like vague and not fully expressed relationship to it. Okay. So let me know how that lands for you. And again, you know, it's just as simple as just journaling or shifting the perspective. Again, it goes back to the other concepts that like it's not outside of you. So like whatever is happening for you on this full moon is your experience of this full moon. And you may be thinking, well, then what's the point of the astrology? It gives us context and it gives us patterns, again, not to be able to like predict necessarily, but to be able to master ourselves and extract, to me, a higher purpose and sense of connection throughout my experiences. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Okay, and lastly, the fourth one is that, well, there's a couple things. So like, first off, there's no rules with astrology. So like, if you are like exploring, let's say, your natal chart and you're wanting to know more about who you are, and by the way, I made a free guide for that. So I'd love for you to get the free guide, which is linked in my bio. And you know, let's say you're exploring that and you're wanting to really get to know yourself better and know what you're about. There's no rules. Now, I know that there's different systems out there, such as human design, and I don't personally vibe with human design. And that is because there's so many rules attached to it. And there's this kind of like given that like you can make a mistake or you can somehow mess up your life by not following these certain rules that what's his name? Uru, whatever. I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way. I can't remember his name. If somebody could remind me, I think it was Uru something. Anyway, I actually have a lot of respect for him as an amazing visionary. But astrology, and I had to do so much healing around this because I was so insecure about myself for not vibing with human design and for choosing to go the astrology route. Not that it's one or the other, but I wasn't planning on talking about human design on this, but it comes up just as an example for contrast that I love astrology because there really are no rules. It's simply a language system, and it's the language of energy, and there's no good or bad, right? And so if you're learning about yourself, you know, free yourself from these limitations or these stereotypes. I like to say that like, this is how this energy is because that's what all the astrology books say or whatever. Like, you know, people say like Virgo's OCD and Gemini's are bipolar. Like, I laugh at those things and there's seeds of truth to them, but like, there's so much more depth. And again, the answers are within you because you are that energy. So you don't need to look much outside of yourself. You have to look at yourself to know it, you know, and there's no rules, right? And so again, the free will piece, like, you have to really get real with yourself and say, like, am I using this in a way to limit myself or to box myself in or to try to, you know, control like who I am or whatever? Because to me, that goes against the spirit of astrology. And again, your free will is most important. However you want to express your energies is for you. But also, it's almost like a seed, right? Like encoded in the DNA of a seed is its full expression. And if you give it the right conditions and, you know, whatever that seed goes through is how it's going to express the plant, let's say. So to me, that's another shift where I really try not to say like I'm a Gemini or whatever. I am someone who was born at a time when the sun was at, you know, 4 degrees of Gemini or whatever it may be. And yet there's so much freedom in expressing that energy because of everything else in my chart and in my life and about who I am. And so the safe way to practice astrology to me with this is about throwing the rules out the window. And again, not outsourcing so much of like what it means to be that, because it honestly just gets boring and it just gets to be so just, you know, flat and one-dimensional at a certain point where every book just says the same things, right? And I encourage you to really open up your heart to meditating on like the frequency of the energies and finding your truth, finding your way, because we're also here to evolve this language. It's not a dead language like Latin, right? It's a living language, and we are the living who are expressing it. So don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, what if the new generation of Gemini is like this, you know, has shifted or whatever it may be. So that's kind of like a little bit more of not advanced, but like it's just a different way of seeing it. But I think it's so important because it's also about how we see others, and we don't want to use astrology to stereotype other people or put them into boxes that limit them and then, you know, interfere with our direct experience of them. Rather, we can use it as a way to open our heart more and just get more curious about what that energy means for us and how they're expressing it and how they may be, you know, presenting it in a way that's totally new and different for us. So that to me is just a really important one that it's almost like a bonus one that I wanted to add in there, because ultimately to me, astrology is about empowerment. And to circle back to the first, you know, the law of correspondence, there is nothing more empowering to me, and this is why I believe astrology has been demoted so much, and there was so much effort put into making it seem less credible. And, you know, there's the history of it is fascinating. But I think that it's one of the most, if not the most, you know, empowering tools that we have, because it is about essentially saying, I am part of the cosmos. I am part of the whole. I'm a reflection of these planets, right? And there's nothing outside of me that's not inside of me as well. And to me, that's about empowerment, and that's about really a way of life, right? That's like connected. So I'm not doing that part as much justice, but let me see if there's any questions. Hi, Tracy. How are you feeling? So Tracy, the Spirit Renegade, asked, as a layperson, how can we utilize astrology daily to help us understand ourselves better? I'm so glad you asked that. So I announced yesterday that I got this idea to do a 28-day living in tune, basically living with astrology challenge. And it's going to be, I've already written it out. It's 28 days of how I have and how I've learned and the different tools and techniques I use either daily or, just as a way of living. Every day I'm going to share one of those with you. So if that's something you're interested, please let me know, because I want to see if 11 people or so would be interested. It would be lives like this where I will be sharing actual techniques like, okay, how do we look at the transits without, getting lost in it or falling into that kind of trap or mindset of like, this is something outside of me. How do we work with our returns? How do we look at the week ahead to understand the context of what's going on in our life, and also make, certain decisions with that, like informed decisions with that? How do we create morning rituals with our astrology? How do we celebrate our lunar returns and other returns? All things, there's 28 of them. They're already there. So if you want to do that and challenge yourself to get into these habits, because you'll be able to take them with you, astrological journaling, all these amazing things, please just send me a message and say, hey, that's something I'd be interested in. It will be paid, but it'll be around probably $222 for the full 28 days, and you'll get the content forever. And this really, it's called Crowned with Stars, and it's just the foundation and the backbone of my way of living astrologically, which I've been developing since I don't even know. I started sharing on it in 2016. So there are things that really have just become part of who I am and how I live my life, how I see my life. And so I really am so excited to share it. And it's going to become like a program that I'm just going to share that, first comes first. Like, this is what you need to know if you want to live in tune, if you want to use astrology daily to understand yourself, but also to navigate life in this way. So, but Tracy, just to answer your question, I would say journaling. Take one part of your chart to sit with, meditate with, do a little research, yes, but again, Google within. And every day, you can get to know that energy a little bit better, get to know yourself a little bit better through the amazing lens and language of your chart. Okay, so I'm going to leave that here. My battery's about to die. Thank you all for being here. Love you so much. If you have questions, let me know. And if you're interested in Crowned with Stars 28 Days of Living in Tune, send me a message or comment. Bye.